Welcome to Today on Eve. It's Thursday, December 5th, 2019. This is Matterall. I have a bit of a mohawk on. It's the earphones. 1 second. Yeah, I don't want to. Hair falls all over my face. Time for a haircut, everyone. All right, let's get on with today. I've been poking through some of the stuff. So real quick, how do we do this show? Well, one is when I have time, I sit down and I have about 10 minutes to get ready. So I turn on a group of tabs that I have on my Safari. Yes, I use Safari, not Chrome. And what I have is about 5 different sources. One is clearly Reddit, because that's where a lot of players put their noise and their information. And I also use the forums, which I would prefer. Those are also garbage depending on the players, but can be interesting, and I kind of feel like it's a little more official, which is good. But then I go to Dotland to look around and see where the action is and what's happening, and then I compare what the statistics look like here with the information that I'm given during the week. So I kind of try to keep tabs on different parts of the game, at least as far as what you would call high-end nullsec PvP or low-sec PvP, or in some cases high-sec. I really like going to Tweet Fleet. I'm liking this more and more. I used to resist it a lot because I didn't know how to use Twitter, and it just seemed very what's the word? Messy. Like the noise to info ratio was real bad. And it still is. I don't think Twitter is a great tool. I know people love it. It's a great tool for broadcasting. It's a great tool for stumbling across things, but random things. And it is a good tool for finding information on a thing if enough people are paying attention to that thing. But Twitter's problematic. It's not easy to use. And then we'll go to the kill board, where I leave ads on just to help the guys who built this stuff. And I see if there's anything there. These are the big kills. You can start there and you can look for anomalies, like when a Titan goes down, or here a super capital goes down, although those are less and less anomalies than they used to be. And then I will hit news areas like NER. That's New Eden Report. Now, they have been slow, but they're starting to spin back up. I like them because they're pretty clean news in that it's straightforward. You can see the 1900 report still up November. Is that Thursday, November? Yeah. So unfortunately, they are still not very active. People who are active, but I enjoy less, is INN, although I was a part of it for a long time. They're definitely keeping up with what's going on in EVE Online. And the artwork is really great. It's very conceptual. And that's neat to see. I think it's very well done. Very happy to see that. The site looks like it needs some work over here on the right. We never did get a better skin on it. Like I said, I used to work for INN. I was a creative director and also the content editor for a long time. But we never did get a good transition to a better website. I guess it's kind of in stasis that way. You know who has changed? And I don't read them anymore. EVE News 24. They've been around a long time. I give them credit for being around a long time, but I know how they survive. When they get slow and they have no writers, what they do is they just republish other people's stuff with permission, and they pay them ISK. But they have a beautiful layout that I'm sure they bought somewhere. I've seen Riverini's design skills. It was not Riverini. But this is a really nice site. And I like that they have a Korean article up. I hope it's not just a one-time thing. That is a good move, something that we're trying to do too. I am not charitable this morning. What happened to me? Wrong side of the bed this morning. I do like this layout, though. I will definitely give them kudos for that. I don't know how it looks on mobile device. I'm sure it's fine. Oh, great. But yeah, Even News 24 looks like they're kind of active. They weren't for a while. And their writers also are problematic.
Is that tall enough? No, I think it needs to be like...
Shut that off. All right, so I've opened up Twitch. That's why you're hearing that. I need to see what's going on out there. Hello, 20 viewers. Oh, one thing that bothers me about today in EVE Online is it has to be done for an audio audience, right? So I have to start the show promptly and then get right into the date and all the sign-on stuff. And then talk about, you know, you probably don't put filler at the beginning of a show. But by the time we really get going and have an audience, it's already been like a half hour. So the problem with listening to this is you get a half hour of filler because we're waiting for the audience. So this whole thing about working on Twitch to produce a podcast, that doesn't actually work very well. We're going to be looking into all that kind of a thing. Like, you either do a show for video, then you publish it out as a VOD on YouTube if you want to keep it around for later reference, and then that's it. And you don't produce a podcast at all. It would save so much work. Problem is, a lot of people consume things in different ways, and sitting at a computer or on their phone isn't always the best way. So it's definitely a tricky thing. All right. One thing that is nice about Twitch is seeing the numbers go up and up and up and up as people figure out that you're on. All right, so as we were saying, how do we do this show? I have a bunch of tabs that I usually open all at the same time, and I go through them. And Even News 24 is not a place I go to anymore. It hasn't been in years, but I do like their new design quite a bit. This is a really gorgeous design. The artwork looks okay. Again, he republishes, he being Riverini, the owner, will republish a lot of stuff because the one thing that keeps the site alive is just constantly publishing. And INN publishes a lot too. They're a little more consistent with original material, but New Eden, who would be a preferred choice if they could publish more, also has a nice design. Those are the three sites I think that give you news from EVE Online. None of them, in my opinion, are doing that well. I think they're all about, from what I can tell, they're all about 50% the strength they used to be. People just don't consume news in that way anymore, and that is just a fact. So news sites is not necessarily a direction that is a smart direction these days. And one of the things that I've learned through books, not through experience, well, I was an entrepreneur in the 90s with a document management company that I built. But this is not experience from that. This is book experiences that you don't want. Well, maybe it's real life experience. You don't want to go into, regardless of how hard you work and how good you are at a thing, you don't want to go into a line of business that is on its way down because you are swimming against a tide or a current. And you really won't, despite how hard you work and despite how talented you are, you're really not going to survive in a technology delivery system that is dying. In other words, if we, Talking in Stations, really wanted to put up a forum because we knew that we could do it well and we had great content, which we do, and we did it, we would die. That forum would be dead because forums aren't the way people consume news anymore. And it's changing. I think if you look at the pattern, it's changing from something that people would check in on to something that people have on all the time. And so that's why you're seeing such an immediacy to news. News now is in your phone. News is not in the morning paper once a day. It's on you all the time. You can check it whenever you want. And the challenge to that is putting something in front of people that check it regularly. You have to have a lot of content going through it without drowning out the actual stories. That's a difficult thing. All right, so let's go to chat here and see how you guys are doing this morning. Again, we're warming up. So the first 15 minutes, I guess we're warming up. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Copperhead Pod says, really enjoy your show. I listen to it, most recent YouTube videos at work. I do admit, in my opinion, you have slanted more anti-Imperium since INN departure, but still, I like your show. Well, first of all, thanks a lot. And two is, I'll address that in just a second. Let me get through these comments. This stream is not about Eve Echoes. I don't know enough about it. I'm asking CCP to put me into the beta so we can check it. We, as Talking in Stations, will have a show. It's going to happen at 3 in the morning Pacific time, which I think puts it in European and Asian time. I'll get more information on that. We're going to have a special show on Eve Echoes with some of the developers to talk about the beta launch that's come out. And so you could check that out. But this show is about EVE Online and the culture around EVE Online. As we become more familiar with EVE Echoes, we'll be doing a lot more EVE Echoes stuff. We are all in on EVE Echoes. We're going to do both EVE Online and EVE Echoes. We're a strong believer that EVE Echoes is the future, or is a future for the whole EVE Online fan base. So definitely, not this particular show because I just don't know that much about it. If I get someone in here who does, then we can talk about it. But that said, yesterday's show, the Wednesday show, will be out today, and that one was all about EVE Echoes. It was a really good demonstration of how it works. We had Ron and Silver putting it up online, streaming it so you could see what it looked like, and he was going through the beginning steps, telling you what he liked about it and how it was working, and they both talked about it. Not great podcast material, great video material, but I think it's still worth listening to, so we'll put it out as a podcast. Okay, so yeah, I see EVE Echoes. That's a problem. Let me change that real quick. One of the things is when you share a station, the titles don't change automatically, so you have to go and do this, and I forgot to do this. My apologies. But if you did come for EVE Echoes, you should know that we had, if you look in our VODs here, video on demand, for Twitch, the very last show that we did yesterday was totally about EVE Echoes. So check that out. And that's the reason that I started out with EVE Echoes. So thanks for telling me. Ooh, is that CCP Convict Live or is that an old? Yes, pre-flight checklist, great idea. We are working on that. We're putting a checklist together so we can we're working on putting intros and outros together as well, so these things can be a little more structured so that you don't get a rambling me like you're getting this morning. It is Thursday. We're getting close to tomorrow, which is a hodgepodge where we invite people in just to talk about things, and that's actually a lot of fun. If you want to be a part of this, by the way, Talking in Stations Discord, you can join that on talkinginstations.com. Check it out and get involved. Okay, I'm coming back to that topic. I didn't forget. I'm just checking out some more stuff. Eve Portal update is getting an update as we speak. Yep, I'm going to talk about that. Thanks for this actual... that was one of my topics. The new wallet is, I'm excited about that, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Okay, let's go back to, thanks guys, you guys give me a bunch of material. Really appreciate it. Since I left INN, do I have a political slant against anti-Imperium? I think I do, and here's why. It's not because I'm, I don't like INN. A lot of the people that work in INN actually work at TIS. A lot of the great people at TIS actually work for INN. So we share people, and that's not a big problem. These are great people. My problem is not actually with INN. My problem is with narratives. And I actually don't have a problem with narratives. So if Pandemic Legion wants to, I'm using this as an example, this isn't true, but if Pandemic Legion wants to spin a narrative that the Imperium is too big and should be taken apart, that's fine. That's their narrative. It's psychological warfare, which is a part of EVE Online. Totally respect that. If Imperium wants to say that Pandemic Legion are jerks, don't join them, that's psychological warfare. That's fine. We leave that to them to fight out. We have no problem with that. The problem I have may appear to be with INN, but what I'm really pushing back against is when the players, not just the Imperium, but the players push against CCP to the detriment of the game. They have agenda-driven psychological warfare against the company. And that narrative, to me, is out of bounds because there's a board that you play on, like chess, and CCP should be left off that board. So when I see that narrative, I will push back on that narrative. And that is why I appear to be anti-Imperium, because Imperium will come out and they'll be pushing this narrative through INN, through the Metashow, through fireside chats. And their people will show up in our Discord because they're here too. They're the same people. And so when they start bringing up all this stuff about how CCP sucks and how Hilmar's killing the company, and it just goes on, at that point I have to say, like, you're exerting pressure on the company to influence it to get what you want. And I feel like that is completely out of bounds. So what I do to that is we try to push back on those narratives, and that's why it looks like I don't like the Imperium. But in actuality, the Imperium to me is another group. As far as INN, those are some of the worst guys that promote these narratives. If you look at Dirk Statiel or Arendis, not so much. I always thought he's a smart guy and somebody I like very much, but at the same time, he's very, very, very much a tribal person, at least in this game. And so I have to discount a lot of what they say because they're always going to be coming from a certain point of view and pushing it. And so that's why it may appear that way. But there's an additional reason that I'm not real happy with the Imperium, and that is they don't say it, but they freeze you out. When you don't play along with them, they will freeze you out. In other words, if we don't carry the narrative or allow the narrative to be carried, we are seen as an enemy, and therefore they stop showing up. They say it's a biased place, it's a place that censors people. They start attacking you because you're not carrying their message. To me, that's like a Fox News move, and it's really just not anything I want to deal with. So if it appears like I'm dismissive, it's because I'm pushing back a narrative, not necessarily them, but a narrative they're using for such psychological warfare. And then being frozen out is not something that I appreciate because we're in the business of talking to everybody. So when all your guys stop talking, all your important guys stop talking to us because we're not carrying your narratives, I see that as kind of a boycott. So that's why. And we're not about that. Like, you guys can fight each other in this game and you can use narratives to fight each other. But when it becomes an attack on the company that is the superstructure of this whole thing, I think that's out of bounds, and we don't want to carry any of that. You can do it if you want, but we don't want to carry any of that. And what we're going to do is try to bring truth always in every direction. So you'll never see pro-NC stuff. You'll never see pro-PL or Horde stuff on Talking in Stations at the expense of anyone else. We're pro-everybody, and we try to cut through a lot of the BS that you hear. And that's the whole idea. So if it looks like we don't like somebody, it's probably because we're trying to cut through a lot of BS that they're throwing our way. All that is probably something I shouldn't have said in public, but there you go. This is what happens when I don't have material. All right, let me read some of your comments. Some of you may disagree with me, but let's go to pre-flight checklist. Hello. Yes, we'll get to game stuff in just a minute. Oh, good. And CCP Convict is here. I'm sorry you had to hear all that. Okay, so the same guy that asked me the question about the INN slant, but still enjoys the show. Copperhead said, to be fair, I don't blame you. I just noticed. I can see that. Okay, well, I hope I've explained that. We're not necessarily against INN. Again, a lot of the people that work here actually help them out too. Some of the people came over from INN with me, and I recruited a ton of people to INN. And so some of those people also were a part of TIS. So when we broke off, they didn't see any problem with it, which is good. That's a very mature way of looking at it. And so we still have a lot of people here. And some of our people have gone over there to help them out with the meta show. For instance, January, Valentine's producing the meta show along with Brisk and Jay. And January is, somebody who's been around TIS a long time. And Brisk also, hung out here for a long time and stuff. So it's good to see him, coming into his own and creating his own show with the Matani there. Okay, so I'll just, at the risk of reading something bad, I'm just going to read out loud whatever I see here. Talking stations, it's not INN though. The whole nature of EVE Online is for the most part forcing others to play the way they want to play. And I think he's talking about a lot of the complaints of players putting pressure on CCP, making CCP then react to those players and give them what they want at the expense of players who aren't complaining. And I got to caution you, and I have this problem too. It looks that way. It's not that way. And the problem is the reality of what's happening is almost never how it appears. But that said, the appearance of conflict of interest is dangerous enough to be something that is a violation of trust. There doesn't have to be a conflict of interest. It's the appearance of conflict of interest that is damaging enough. And CCP has to think about that sometimes when you look at the pattern of what's happened over this summer. And I was going to write about this, but I just didn't think anything good could come of really examining this. And it's only my opinion. But even though CCP is making moves on their own for their own reasons, it appears that they are succumbing to pressure of nullsec players, not just the Imperium, correct, but all nullsec players. And that appearance alone is dispiriting to people who don't want the game owned by anybody except the company. I've always said I'd rather CCP create something that doesn't work right, that is broken. I'd rather that than to feel like a Pandemic Legion has told CCP how to make something. Because I can deal with a broken mechanic. I can give the company a break about a broken mechanic or a mechanic that's hard. But I cannot forgive a game that's rigged. There's a whole fairness proposition there. If we're all suffering the same broken mechanic, I can live with that. I can't live with NC Dots or PL's version of how Sov warfare should happen. So there you go. That's a good point, and that's something they have to be careful of. But I want to assure you that CCP, at least appears to, when I talk to people and examine it closely, to be doing moves on their own despite what players want. And sometimes what players want is the same thing CCP wants, and sometimes it's not, and they're going to be disappointed. You have to keep looking at the actual path. This becomes even more important now that you have Talos basically creating stuff very quickly. It's not just balancing the game, but it's also new stuff, and but a lot of it is balance. And you have CCP Rise there, and CCP Rise is the balance guy, although you can't pigeonhole him because he's also done, helped usher in the alphas, and he helped usher in skill injectors. I think actually had a lot to do with skill injectors. So this guy is not a one-trick pony at all. I don't think any of them are. But he's not just a PvP balance guy, but he is that too. And that's why this Talos looks like, okay, we're finally giving a dedicated team for rapid execution of changes to players to keep them off balance, to make the veterans have to work harder and to keep them entertained. And what you're seeing is this cult of Steve is going to save, Rise is going to save us. He's going to, make the game fun again. He's going to give us things to fight over and all this other stuff. And I think, one, that puts too much pressure on the guy. That's unfair. Two, no one person is going to save the game. I think it's the players have a lot to do with it as far as what they deliver to the game, because that's what makes it interesting. And also, I think that I think going back to narratives, when you talk about the company in a bad way, and all your people are upset about the company because the company's incompetent, they can't do it, and all this terrible stuff they say about the company, you can't turn those people around on a dime. So instead what you do is you say, okay, the company's bad, but we like this guy, and this guy is our guy. He's going to do the right thing. And that's what you're seeing, which is why I get upset at someone like Caleb, who actually, he's an independent thinker. I know it doesn't seem that way, but he's an independent thinker. But when he comes on and says, that's why Rise is, the Messiah or whatever, I have to stop him and say, like, enough with that, because you can't say the company sucks and then this one guy is going to save the game and all this other stuff. I feel like that's really the same psychological warfare you played before. And the reason you're doing it is because you can't turn your people around fast enough because they're still mad because you made them mad or you helped them to get even madder. And that's what that stuff is. Wow, a lot of comments. I think I'm getting the hang of how to like get your chat going. Let's talk about controversial stuff that everybody can have an opinion on. And that's how you do it. Yeah. Yeah, I fixed up the Eve Echo. Matterall, PvP will always rule this game. It has since day one, and they're never going to change that. Griefing High Sec, a concerned player for years, hasn't changed it. Will always be there. It's part of the game, and that is from one shot over. And I couldn't agree with you more. All I say to that is I really love, believe it or not, old school brawling, where I see this game as a Counter-Strike but bigger. And the problems that we're having now, I think, in the game are that people feel like, at least people who've been around a long time, feel like the game is very stagnant. So a lot of the complaining about PvP is, how did we get here? Why aren't you guys fighting? And when you ask that to players, they'll say, well, because CCP doesn't give us anything to fight over. At the same time, they have these massive treaties to keep themselves intact that benefits leaders of these organizations, right? Because if you have a squad of 8 guys, that's really cool. That's fun. But imagine if you have a squad of 32 guys. Well, that feels even cooler because now you've got more people who look at you as a leader, and that feels pretty good. Well, multiply that 32 by 10. And if you have 3,000 people or potential players that are looking at you as their leader, well, that feels really cool. And so the bigger the groups get, the cooler it feels for the people in charge. Because now you're famous, and when you walk around, people look at, people seek you out and they want to talk to you and all this other stuff. So it feels great to have a big group in EVE Online. Also, you dominate and you have headlines that talk about you. You get interviewed. People want to talk to you. We want to talk to you, that kind of stuff. And so the status quo benefits the leaders. And there's a lot of servants in the leaders, right? Because those guys have to do a lot of work. I'm not taking anything away from that. But it does feel good to have a bigger and bigger and bigger group. It also keeps you protected. But my feeling about it is that kind of freezes things up. And so that desire to keep the group big and to grow it collides with the, I think it collides with the versatility of experiences. Because everything starts to get planned, so you can have all those people on a weekend attack a thing, and it starts to get very routine. And it's not very exciting to read about. It's not very exciting to look at. It's not very exciting from a fan perspective, which is the perspective I take. I tend to like surprises. Like, wow, we haven't seen that before. Let me tell you why that's important. That's what we look for. So yeah, that's the opinion I come from, and that may be a little bit biased against the status quo. I like to see things that are new and different and novel. Okay. Thank you guys for writing all the stuff that you have, and I appreciate that. Okay, this is a good one. Wow, you're just so judgmental. Yes, I am very judgmental. Like, if you haven't read my stuff, if you don't know who I am or what I'm about, I am judgmental. My whole thing is to make judgments about the game. It's not just to present information, but it's to show people how you look at information, how you look at the information behind the information, what the real game is. That kind of stuff is what I try to do. And that takes a lot of judgment on what's real and what's, not really that important. But again, I come from, as far as PvP ruling the game, there's no way to deny that. It's the engine of the economy. It also creates the fear that makes everything important. I totally believe that you should be able to be attacked in all places in space. And high-sec ganking has never really been an issue that I've had a problem with. I know other people have, but you won't hear that from me. And I do think the war deck mechanics were broken that allowed anybody who was growing in high-sec to be crushed quickly, and that was bad. And that happened for many years. That I didn't like. But as somebody who looks like I've done everything in the game, but a lot of time I spent ice mining and high-sec just to keep my towers going a while ago. And I would get ganked while I was mining, and I'd be like, no problem, have no problem with being ganked. It's a little frustrating. It's a setback. But that is what keeps the population down. So so it makes mining my own ice worth it, because it's expensive, because miners are getting killed. And that is the actual cycle that I like. So you need disruptors in every system. There can't be a super safe system. And all that fear creates meaning. And the meaning is what really drives everything in EVE Online. It's when things are easy, like we saw this summer before, Tribute exemplified easy, right? When the game is easy, even for the most advanced players, that's when the game is at its worst. And that's why this summer was a little bit tough. Talking stations, you live in nullsec, right? I did live in nullsec. I have since moved out of nullsec. I was part of NC. For many years. No offense to them. I love NC. Some of the people in there, some of the people I don't like very much. I loved Lady Scarlet and Dice. That's my corporation I was with the longest ever with anyone. But I just don't see a lot of fun in that gameplay anymore. That's not to say it's not fun. It's incredibly fun for newer people, but I've just done it too long and not found any joy in it. I don't like a lot of the behavior that is associated with it as well. I like old school brawling, smaller fleets. I like to see tactics. I like to see something interesting instead of a wait. Like nullsec is a lot of wait. You get a lot of people in the same place, and you have tactics, but the tactics are for like 5 or 10 people. Everybody else is really putting their weight in, and that doesn't mean that F1 pushers are just useless. They're not. You have to know how to fly. You have to know how to keep yourself alive. When to call for reps, when not to be a burden to the fleet by calling reps too often, not screaming and panicking when a bomber hits you, and stuff like that. I mean, F1 pushers have a lot to think about. They're not dodo birds. But that's what I consider that weight in a big engagement. And so what's really happening is, and people have known this for a long time, the FCs are actually the ones fighting. And what you're doing is you're allowing the FC to use you as a resource to apply DPS, right? He's not applying DPS, but you're all applying DPS where he wants it, when he wants it. So you're a tool to the FC. And I think with smaller fights, you have a much more engagement as a player. If you die, it's important that you died. If you're in a small group and you're the guy that does the electronic warfare, like you've got to deliver that electronic warfare at the right time. So there's a lot more meaning in what you're doing. It's not as grandiose. It won't make the news. Talking stations won't invite you on to talk about it. But that really is really sweet gameplay where you're actually fighting. You're actually fighting in a way that's more meaningful than if you're fighting in a big group. The big group is like, hey, I was a part of that big historic event. I was there, and that means something. But after a while, that won't mean anything. And what does mean something is are you actually getting joy out of it? Okay, so yeah, so what so what I'm going to do in high sec is it's not high sec. I'm in low and high, and I'm actually in null too. I'm just independent, and we're starting a corporation just to manage. We don't want anybody in it to manage a fleet academy. You know how I'm talking about brawling and how I like that kind of smaller gameplay and a person who's actually flying the ship having meaning and understanding what they're doing and actually becoming like good at the combat, the ship combat aspect of the game. And I like that, and I think a lot of people would like that if they could get over a certain amount of fear. So what I'm trying to do is create what has already been created. It's not an original idea. This comes from many groups, but the one premier group is Agony Unleashed PvP classes. And we want to create that, but a little bit bigger, with a whole curriculum on subjects. And we're matching up great FCs, like really high quality FCs and teachers, with students who want to learn a thing. Now, a student can join a corporation, or a person can join a corporation, fly with their guys, bond with them, and learn all the stuff that we could teach anyway. So you can do this on your own. It's just going to take you longer. And if you're joining a group and you actually maybe don't feel like you want to be made fun of if you screw up, then that may not be the right environment for you to learn. So we provide screw up is fun. Don't worry about it. Low pressure environment. You're going to bring your own stuff. You're going to lose your own stuff. So it's going to be valuable to you. You're not going to want to die because somebody gave you something. So basically, you come in as an independent contractor. You go on the fleets with us. They're not just fun fleets. They're educational fleets. So we have a purpose to the fleet. And it's not just to go out and kill things. We don't care about that. We care about executing the class that we're talking about, whether that be how to fly a bomber the correct way, how to how to fly manually, how to, how to and when to loot a field. We could do classes on anything. So we'll have those kinds of seminars. But we're also going to focus on new players, getting them out there, putting them in the FC chair, putting them in scout chairs, really showing people how to play the ship PvP part of the game so that they can go out with more confidence and join the group that they want to join. And so what we're going to do is set up a whole curriculum of that so that they can also have a way of tracking their own progress. And thank you guys for the recruiting messages. I appreciate it. I've got a lot to do without joining a corp, but I appreciate that. All right. So there's the first half hour of more personal information that I care to usually give, but there it is. Now let's talk about EVE Online. So the first thing I think, and this is the thing I did want to focus on, is EVE Portal has the new wallet. And this is really cool because new wallet has beautiful design inside the game. I want to take you back to, it was EVE Vegas, where it was a very quick comment that one of the speakers was making. I'm not even 100% sure who it was. I'll go back and find it at some point. And he said that we're designing stuff in the game in a way that we can easily move it to the phone. And the reason for that, I think it makes a lot of sense, is to design EVE Online to be mobile, essentially. And now I'm not talking about EVE Echoes. That's a different game, requires a lot of different stuff. But if they're going to design an interface in the game that they want to put on your phone, you can believe that the design is going to be mobile friendly. And I think this is the first confirmation of that. They designed something for the game that is this wallet. It's not even in the game yet. But on your phone, it just arrived today. And the wallet is all your money, your loyalty points, your Plex, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a really smart idea to design this kind of thing that you can put into the portal for EVE Online. Design it one time for both purposes. And I think that's what they've done. So you see this big thing on the screen here? That's how you find it. It's actually, Eve Portal is kind of hard to find on, at least on Apple. Well, it might have been that I tried too soon, but when I looked for it, it was hard to find. So this barcode is a shortcut. If you zap it, I think you can even zap it off this Twitch. It will take you right to the application, which is brilliant. And so that will allow you to get the app without having to look for it. It's called Eve Portal. I believe it's Eve Portal 2, isn't it? I'll check my phone. Yeah, it's Eve Portal 2. There was a Portal before. It wasn't very successful. That's why they made a second version. And this one seems to be growing pretty fast. My hunch is that Hypernet Relay may come to Eve Portal. If they do that, wow. I mean, that's have no idea what a big deal that would be. It might be a good thing. It might be a really terrible thing because people would have access to play that gambling game. We'll put that in quotations. That gambling game in and out of the client, which for people who have impulse control problems is a real problem. And not to get too far into it, but impulse control and the random generation and getting lucky and getting a marauder for 1/10 the price and like all this kind of stuff works on you. And there are certain barriers to that, right? Like money. How much money do I have in the game? How much Plex do I have in the game? Well, if you have to do 4 or 5 or 6 steps to get more Plex into the game, you have 5 or 6 opportunities to say, yeah, I don't really want to do this. But CCP has put in something that looks like a one-click. Let's see if I can show you that, actually. I have it right here. One click to Plex. And, oops, there it is. That one click to Plex button is something that's coming in your new wallet. I believe that doesn't exist yet, but I may be wrong. In any case, that's it right there. One hit of that button will take you into the store, and in the store you can automatically link to your actual wallet, your actual bank account, and buy some Plex. And that's just a little too fast for me. That kind of frictionless allows less opportunities for you to stop yourself. That's great for business. That's not so good for people with impulse control. Couple that with the Hypernet Relay, which is where you're going to want Plex to buy the cores that create the Hypernet offers. And you have a recipe for disaster for some people, not for most people. So it's an interesting thing. I do like having the wallet on here so you can check your money, expect market stuff to make it to the phone. I think, although it's not announced, I think Hypernet might make it to the phone as well. And this will make your phone and your Eve life a lot easier for these, what they call offline behaviors. So it'll be very interesting. Okay, let's go to some comments here. Gambling is everywhere. Yes, well, funny thing about gambling is, what is gambling technically? There's lots of different types. And I don't know if you think about RNG as gambling, I take you to baseball trading cards or Star Wars cards for those of you that are old enough. You used to get a pack of 12, and every time you bought a new pack, 8 of those were dupes. You already had those, so you could trade those. That was part of the fun, right? But you're not buying the packs for duplicates. You're trying to get those original ones. And they make some that are very, very rare, so that you're constantly buying packs of 12 to get that one rare card. Is that gambling? I don't know. I think it all works. It all works on the same, what's called a reward path, a reward pathway in your brain. It has a name. If you read about psychology and how cocaine works, and if you read about even executive function control, decision making, motivation, if you look at all this stuff, it gets very interesting very fast, and you can see why video games are so popular. They're really tapping into the same, I think it's symbiotic or something pathway. They're touching that same pathway that humans have used before electricity was around. It's the same pathway that allowed you to be social, to group up for safety and for mutual benefit. Go back 20,000 years or more, and you'll start to see patterns of how the brain evolved to allow people to group up to begin with, and how they prospered because they didn't do the same thing over and over and over again. Because after a while, you get tired of the same thing over and over and over again. Have you noticed that? Like something will be fun and you're thinking like, why isn't this fun anymore? Why can't I get the same high that I got before? It happens with cocaine. It happens with video games. It happens with all kinds of stuff. Yeah, cocaine. I keep calling cocaine. Well, cocaine it chemically hits that pathway, and that's why it's, you'll do coke before you'll eat. I have no experience with cocaine, by the way. I've never touched it. I've never been in the same room with it. Closest I got to it was a club where I couldn't use the bathroom because the door guy said, sorry, a light bulb broke in the bathroom. I was in the VIP lounge, right? So it was already exclusive, and they had a bathroom there, but that was obviously the drug room. I just didn't know it. So I went down to the floor with all the other guys and used the bathroom down there, which I thought was kind of funny because it's incredibly naive. Yeah, so anyway, the point is that those all hit the same pathway. Gambling can hit the same pathway because it releases the same chemicals. Funny thing about gambling is you don't actually have to win to become more addicted, let's say. You win before the cards are revealed. That's actually when you get the hit. And because I think it's dopamine. Dopamine is a motivational chemical in your head. It's not a reward mechanism like people thought. People used to think, and I'll give you an example. People used to think that when you are doing a thing, when you get the right result, when you receive the reward, all of a sudden you get all the chemicals. No, you get the reward before you win or lose. The example that I use is, maybe this isn't the right place for it, but since I'm talking about all this stuff, I'll make this the most controversial episode we've had. But let's say you meet a girl, and for me it would be a girl, for you it might be a same sex, but and you're talking with her and you're feeling like, yeah, this is working out. We're on the same wavelength. I'm making her laugh. Things are good. I can kind of tell she likes me because she looks a certain way. And you're starting to feel these signs, and you're starting to feel pretty good about yourself. And it gets even more intense when, I don't know if you guys have ever been here, but when you know it's on, right? Like she likes you, you like her. That moment where you know it's on, that is when you're rewarded. Not the next morning after you've gotten what you want, or when you're dating for, you don't get that later on. You get it when you're like, this is successful. This is becoming successful. And the thing about gambling, to take it back to that, is you get that feeling before you even see the results. So win or lose, you're going to feel pretty good. That's why people say, I like gambling. It's relaxing. Well, why on earth would gambling be relaxing? It should be stressful because you're going to win or you're going to lose. That's because they're getting rewarded anyway. Whether you win or you lose, you're still getting rewarded. And that's the kind of thing that it works. One of the cool things about EVE Online is it's a very economical way to stimulate that stuff, because you have that, plus you have adrenaline, plus you have all kinds of stuff. You have soothing gameplay in EVE Online, right? And you're doing trades and you're kind of calculating some things and working on spreadsheets. Very stimulating, very soothing. And then some people are like, oh, forget spreadsheets, because their chemicals aren't firing for that. Their chemicals fire for adrenaline, the excitement, the chance, am I winning this? Am I losing this? All that kind of stuff. Fear triggers adrenaline. So whether it's good or bad in EVE Online, it still brings you back because it's rewarding you chemically. And that's the thing that cracks me up when people say, like, why do you play EVE Online if it's not fun? And I'm thinking, I've been playing EVE Online for 10 years, and it's torture. It's horribly torturous, but I'm still playing it. Why? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And I think it's because you get rewarded either way. It's one of the cool things. Yeah, cortisol levels rise when you undock. One of my the funniest images I saw, I still have it somewhere, but I can't find it fast enough, is this guy, when Fitbit came out and you could track your heartbeats throughout the day, and you could see it's kind of good regular heartbeat. And then in the middle of the day, he would work out. And so his heartbeat would go up and stay up and then come back down, and it would go on, and it would go up pretty high. And then in the evening, you see this other spike that's almost as high as when he was working out. And he circles it and points to it and says, NC Gate Camp. So I thought that was pretty funny. So yeah, the game's exciting. But anyway, wallet inside the game, really cool. I really like that. By the way, I have some advice for you guys if you want to take my advice. And I certainly would respect you if you didn't anyway. But I would be buying Plex right now because Plex is going to buy these hypercores. And the hypercores are going to sell on the market for people who don't want to use their Plex to buy hypercores. So they're going to be inflated for a while. So my advice is get into Plex now, get into hypercores as soon as they come out. I think they're coming out really fast because they're going to want to seed those maybe even before HyperNet Relay hits. So take advantage of that. Get into the Plex right now. If you want to, get on hypercores, sell off your, because I think there will be a real nutty figuring out how to use HyperNet for the first month at least, because people don't play as often as every day. But definitely you want to get into Plex, get into the hypercores, sell your high-priced stuff because that's what it's really good for. It's not good for piles of stuff. If CCP were to make it good for piles of stuff, it would be an amazing exponential change to how HyperNet is used. And I hope they don't do it at least anytime soon, because right now it's going to be really lucrative for people that have high value single items because you can only do one item at a time. So if you have a pile of 1 billion tritanium, you can't sell it except one at a time, which you will never do. So yeah, it's meant for rare items. And I do like the idea that it kind of gives unique items a place to be sold. And that's what's great about the Triglavian setup and HyperNet go really, really well together. It'd be really interesting. So if you make Triglavian stuff and you have some really interesting, unique stuff, you don't have to put it on the market and convince people because there's nothing like it. You can't really compare anything to it. So it's hard for people to kind of value that. The HyperNet will only make that even better for the seller because people will want to compete for something. And I think it's an amazing way to get Triglavian or mutated modules to more people at a lower price. So more people get into that market. This HyperNet really cuts in so many ways. I know people are talking about the gambling aspect to it, and that's not anything you can shake off. But the amount of damage that this is going to do to the economy is fantastic. It's for the velocity is going to go crazy because people are going to be moving money around like crazy. The trading of money is going to be hyper. But what you'll see is the rare items probably come off the market and try to get sold on HyperNet where you can get a better return. One thing it's not going to hit, this is very interesting, is it's not going to hit Plex yet. And so the offshoring empire that's built right now that nullsec is kind of has inside the game is not yet in danger because their money is almost all RMT money. And by RMT, I mean legitimate RMT. And that is injectors, selling skill points basically, and selling time, which is Plex. So Plex, injectors, that's the kind of stuff that makes money for the New Eden Trading Company or whatever, and not New Eden Trading Company, but the Perimeter, the Tranquility Trading Company or whatever it is. They're owned by Test, but the profits are divvied up, a little bit going to Goons, a little bit going to Horde. Not a little bit, kind of a lot actually going to Horde, because Horde controlled that whole market until Test came around and put down a Keepstar. Then they fought over it for a while. Then they decided to join forces, and that's what's going on there. So they're making a bunch of money off people who are trading Plex. And they will continue to do that because HyperNet is not a good place to trade Plex yet. But at any moment, if CCP decided to kill offshoring, they could just say, okay, you can trade Plex on the HyperNet. And I think that would kill that. Red Thoughts. Oh no, Matterall, when did you get a Mac? I've always been on Mac. I've been on and off. I use both all the time. But I like to stay on Macintosh because I feel like it's swimming in a swimming pool, as opposed to Windows, which is like swimming in a river. You can't see anything, and it's taking you for a ride, and you might bump into a branch and scratch your leg, or it's pretty adventurous if you know how to swim and you know how to use an inner tube and all that kind of stuff. But I prefer the tranquility on an operating system of just knowing that it's going to work, and that's it. I don't need to do the fancy stuff. I just need something to work. The problem is, video games is the domain of Windows, so I run into some problems. Yeah. Okay. I am judgmental. I don't know if you've gotten that yet. This is pretty cool. I saw it today, and this is in the news channels for EVE Online, the Galactic Hour News Roundup, Campaign Propaganda Broadcast Edition. I was thinking of reading this because I want to get into doing more in-game news. The problem is there's a lot of stuff I cannot pronounce, so it would just be a tragedy. But anyway, check this out. You can find that under news channels, under community.eveonline.com. That's where the dev blogs are, the patch notes, and all that kind of stuff. But check out news channels every once in a while. Get a flavor for what's going on in EVE Online. Yeah. And Dunk Dinkle here says, if you put a larger ship like an Orca with a chance to win at a few million, people will give it a try. Again, HyperNet Relay, that's what we're talking about here. You put in one item, like an Orca, you give out 8 tickets, and you want 8 million for the Orca. I'm just putting numbers here. And so then everybody has a ticket for 1 million. It's a good deal for everybody who has an independent ticket. So whoever wins that is a winner. They got an Orca at 1 million. The person selling also wins because they got 8 million for a ship that's worth, let's say, 6. The people who lose with HyperNet are the people who lose the raffle. They lose ISK. They don't lose Plex or anything like that, but they will lose ISK. So if you bet and lose and bet and lose and bet and lose, you will eventually run out of money. And you are what's feeding the profits for the guy that got it on discount and the guy that sold it for more than it was worth. Exactly. That's another good tip from Mark Knorr, 1981. Invest in good faction mods. Absolutely. The more rare the item is, the better it's going to be for HyperNet. So if I were preparing for HyperNet, I would be buying up faction stuff. I would be buying up expensive stuff, but I would be buying it up because that's the kind of stuff that's going to do better on that than very typical stuff. I wouldn't bother with T1 items. I wouldn't bother maybe even T2 items. T2 ships maybe, but rare stuff is going to be really important to have for HyperNet. And Plex and cores, because those are going to be super inflated when they come out. Market monitoring software won't help you with HyperNet. I don't think that is... CCP is going to tell us how well it worked when it's over. And I think it's going to be a smashing success. I hate to admit that because I'm not 100% behind the ethics of gambling. I don't like it, and talking stations may not get involved with HyperNet at all just because of that. We have to we have to figure out if it's within our ethics to really get behind this sort of thing. But regardless of what we do, people in the game are going to use that. I've played it. It's actually quite fun. If you have money, it's even funner because you could do it longer. And it's just it's a nightmare for people with impulse control problems. But you know, and that's something to consider. I really want to get involved with it. I just don't know if it aligns with like Talking in Station's brand. That's why I'm having second thoughts about it. Yesterday I sounded completely different, says RageMaster999, and that's probably true. I want to get in. I want to be a winner. The competitive part of me wants to get in there and be somebody out front because I do know it's going to be successful. But getting into something and trying to be successful at a thing that's successful has a whole allure to it. And you have to put that next to, in the long run, is it the kind of thing that we want to be associated with? I personally don't like gambling or Las Vegas or any of that stuff. So it doesn't really fit. But then, I don't know. It's a complicated situation. All right. There's a couple things here. On Reddit, there is... Oh, this is another thing, not on Reddit. This is EVE Online has put out the music for EVE Online on Spotify. That's pretty cool. But I want to take this opportunity to take you to talkinginstations.com for a reason. Oh, by the way, let me finish talking about that first. So where did you go? Where did you go? Hello? Here. So EVE Online music on Spotify. Let me finish talking about that. I think it's great. If I'm not mistaken, I guess I can turn this on and see what it is. We'll click on it. A long time ago, yeah, this is it. A long time ago, RealX, who is a guy that's his like stage name. I think he has a different CCP name. And he put out an album a long time ago. We're talking like 2010. And it was these songs that were some of the EVE songs. And I bought the album off iTunes before I knew you could just get them for free. I think I bought it anyway because I buy everything that CCP puts out. And this is that same album. So it's not all the EVE music. It's 11 songs that were picked. It's put out under RealX, but RealX is the guy, CCP, I forgot his name, and he's since left the company. He's an Icelandic guy, and he did all the music. So that's what that is. And that's not a big deal because it's been on iTunes forever. But it's now free to listen to on Spotify, and check that out. But I think there's a much better way to listen to EVE music. And that is through, I'm taking you to talkinginstations.com. And right here, you'll see on talkinginstations.com on the right-hand side, jukebox. It's the very first thing after the search box called EVE Online Jukebox. Click on that. And this takes you to something that's built by Ashy and Ashen or Ashy in space. You can go directly to it, ashyin.space. And this jukebox is amazing. And it's not just 11 songs, it's all the songs. And not only all the songs that you hear in the game, but it's the orchestral versions. It's the cinematic themes. Like you cannot find this in the game, right? These are the trailers, the music for trailers. You have the permaband information here, and just all kinds of stuff. It's probably the most complete collection of music for EVE Online. Now there is another place, SoundCloud. Look up CCP Games. That's where CCP puts a lot of their music. So you can get music for other games like Dust 514 music's in there, and Valkyrie music's in there, and you also have what's the other game? The other mobile game that CCP made. Somebody help me out. I should know this. I'll look it up right now. Just go to SoundCloud, CCP Games. And scroll down, you'll see there's different playlists. Let's go to playlists. I bet somebody said it though. Let's see. Nope, nobody's told me what the game is. Here it is.
Gunjack.
Somebody in here with me? Oh,
Hi, Fonsui. I just jumped in. Is
can't
it
hear you
Gunjack?
for some reason, Fonsui, like you are practically muted. Gunjack! Gunjack music's in here. So this is like where they officially put their music. CCP games on sound. Oh, no. I'm going to go ahead and give that to you in the show notes and here. But my favorite way of looking at it, because SoundCloud's okay, but my favorite way of looking at it is through Jukebox made by Ashy. I love this thing. And it's got such an old school appeal to it. Let's actually see if I can play something. I still get misty when I hear EVE Online. Yes, here's a link to the website. Good call. You can always find it on talkingstations.com. But I strongly recommend bookmarking this page. It's got the old interface. It's got the old jukebox that we used to have. This is how we listened to music a long time ago. Similar. I don't think it was actually laid out this way. I think it just had the title. Could be wrong. It might be exactly the way it used to look. And I think the volume works. Yes. See that? It's amazing detail, attention to detail there by Ashy. So the volume bar works.
It's funny how we like these interfaces. By the way, is my audio coming in clear right now?
You're registering okay, but for some reason I can't hear you. Let me ask the crowd. You guys can hear him? This is Fonsway talking. Go ahead.
Hey, all right. Oh, hey, Convict. How you doing? Yeah, it's funny how we like these these old interfaces. We could play music any way we want, but something about the look and feel of it matters to us. There's that emotional quality. Like Signal Cartel has a custom navigation and it, essentially navigation software that runs in the web and tracks your location and helps the members perform the cache tending. The Eve Scout rescue caches. It's got the mappings and it's got warnings and information about basically how to go about the corporate programs and everything. And one of the top requests for an addition to this was a radio. Like people could just fire up their own media player, they could play it on their phone, they could do anything they want, but they wanted a radio in this tool because this is the thing that they use and they wanted it themed this way.
Yeah. I remember that request for that. In fact, when they built the walking in stations portion that you see there in the background, that came in around 2011. So that's not really old school like this jukebox is. I think they only overlapped for a couple of years, actually. The jukebox taken out shortly after the captain's quarters came in, right? The walking in station. One of the things that people wanted to do was to be able to sit on a couch and you had screens up that would show you some real-time stuff that's happening in EVE Online, but just stats on PI or something like that. And it wasn't something you could interact with. So people wanted to be able to play YouTube inside their virtual reality. I thought that was pretty funny. Okay, so we covered let's do a quick review. We covered that the wallet is now on your phone. Let me see if I can bring that up for you guys. We also covered that CCP has EVE Music on Spotify now, so look it up by name. You can also look up Talking in Stations on Spotify if you want to. And also Today in EVE Online, I think should be on Spotify, but I'm not 100% sure. Oddly enough, I have a hard time finding the portal program. Here it is. I'll turn it up so you can see. And character seat switch home. I don't see how to access it yet because it has I don't think you can see this, so there's no point in holding it up. If I plug it in, you can see it, but it'll take me a minute to set that up. You have home, you have skills, then you have store, and maybe this
Oh,
isn't updated yet.
Convict says the update is tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay. Well, that's why I can't see it. Oh, you know what? I got a message, and this is why I'm confused. Thank you, Convict. Thank you. Thank you. Tomorrow, look for that wallet. The reason I got confused is because I got a message today that said it wanted to update Eve Portal 2. And I've never seen a message like that from Apple, but it was a little message that said going to update. So I figured it updated last night, and it was there this morning. So, okay, I was looking for it. It's not there. It will be there tomorrow. Look for the wallet inside Eve Portal 2. The actual update, though, the market update hits on the 10th, 5 days later, so it's going to come in a bit early. All right, talking in stations, we're finally caught up. Sorry about that for people who we were behind because of the Thanksgiving weekend. So we put out Hypernet Relay and patch notes that they did on the midweek last week. And then last Sunday, we had Andrew Groen. It was a really good show with Elise Randolph, Andrew Groen, and a bundle of other people. And you can check that out. That's now up. It was done on December 1st. It's now released. And then a really cool article on why do we play EVE Online, written by, again, Ashy, who's our editor at TIS. And so she put that up. In fact, if you're looking for articles, I don't really drive this nearly enough, but Talking Stations does have articles. We just do a few at a time. So we have a lot of stuff you'll see here. You can see on Ashy's website as well, because she writes for both. But Olmeka's post here on Post Vegas, and he talks about his experience there. We talk about all kinds of little things here. And like I said, going into news at a time when news sites are really dropping to about half of what they were before isn't necessarily the best idea. Still, you want an archive of information that people can go to that's reliable, that will be around a long time without getting all messed up and, dead links and all that. It's really sad. So we might put stuff up here on a more regular basis. Okay. Gosh, that's an old one. Let me close out. What's up with you, Fonsui?
Oh, just saying hello. Saw you were live. You mentioned something about breaking your teeth over triangle words. I figured I'd offer.
Oh, yes. Next time, I was gonna read some of the in-game news, but we can do that another time. We're gonna wrap up here pretty soon. For those that don't know, Eve Echoes is out. Of course, I think you all know that. It's not out. Sorry, it's the beta, maybe even the alpha that's out, but it's just a limited number of test people. So be aware that it's coming, though, probably early next year. And from what I've heard, it looks delicious. People are really liking it. So the results of no downtime, we didn't actually cover this. We'll need to talk to a few people that were on the lookout for what the effects were. I think it went well, but there was some goofiness with local the next day, yesterday. But I think for the most part it went well. And that is a test for doing that more often. Who knows what will happen to downtime in general? We talked all about that yesterday. You can listen to that. Maybe it's a rolling downtime that happens randomly so that people can't bank on it. But it has a lot of ramifications beyond just being a good thing, right? There's some problems to it because downtime created a certain play style around it, like when you would do things near downtime, how do Cloaky campers react to downtime, that kind of stuff.
There's actually a couple of things that the downtime change would impact, regardless of whether they are attempting to eliminate it or simply make it less frequent. There are a lot of processes that, housekeeping stuff that are currently coupled to downtime but aren't inherently coupled to downtime. So when they didn't do downtime, yesterday, they were essentially seeing what breaks and seeing the processes that must in fact be decoupled from that, from that one window, and seeing which ones they're going to have to run in the background with everything live and which ones they can actually get away with. I'm hoping that they got some good data from the test, because it definitely caused some frustration for people, but I think that was expected.
Yeah. Here is the article from Eve News that we were talking about. And it is the Galactic News Hour with Rhett Gloriox. Brings a roundup of the latest news across all at New Eden as Zora Triglov continues to broadcast propaganda. Potential candidates for highest office of the Galenta Federation maneuver for position. What is that about?
So the
Two things there, I
the
think.
billboards have been taken over. Yeah, the billboards have been taken over. That's, first and foremost. The new stellar, the observatory flashpoint sites are out. That was the chapter 2 release.
Mm.
The the empires are striking back. Almost literally. There are new groups of NPCs called retaliating empire entities that have been added, which you fight in the new sites. So this is referencing that.
So I saw how it looked like. Let's see here. Somebody had joined, one of our friends. I joined Triglov. What's it? How do you join them?
So currently, the join mechanic is pretty thin. The new site, the observatory flashpoint site, which, if I'll give the elevator version of the lore background there.
Mm-hmm.
They've now moved on from the world arc, from sending world arcs into our space, and now they are building these structures around certain very specific stars, and we don't know what they're doing there, and we're very concerned about it. There's been text strings that have been added to different places that indicate that they're either trying to create a permanent link, from abyssal dead space to there, or perhaps even bring entire star systems, or perhaps just the sun itself into abyssal dead space. And we have no idea what they're up to, but it's definitely no good. And at these flashpoint sites, these are where we are given the choice to to assist the Triglavians or assist the Empire, to betray our people, etc. The choice mechanic is per site, meaning the choice isn't for your character, the choice is for your site. When you land on the site, there are two gates. One gate, go through one gate to help the Triglavians kill the Empire, go to the other gate for the other way around. You clear out the gate that you want, the other gate explodes, and the site is now locked into that particular side of the encounter. And then you can run and clear the site. 90 minutes later, that site will respawn in that system, and you can choose again. There are no faction standings, hits, or gains that are associated with this particular content.
Yeah, here's Mark726, a friend of the show's. He is an amazing guy that writes all about his travels through EVE Online as an explorer slash chronicler of landmarks throughout EVE. So if you ever need to find out what's in EVE Online and you want to tour around, you should check that out. Let me look up his. That is evetravel.wordpress.com. Check out that website. I will link it for you guys. It's a beautiful site. Great writer, great stories, and really great guy. Really great guy. And he's been doing this a long, long time. So look up his work. And he joined Triglavian, it looked like, and that was what I was just peering at. Here's the sign that he got that he was. They were asking him, "Who do you want to fight for?" kind of thing. I thought that was kind of funny.
That box is what pops up when you initiate warp to the new site. And what's interesting about the message is that this is the first time they have called us a Kybernaut. We have been referred to by Zoria, by the other Triglavians, numerous times until now, and they have always referred to us as augmented foreign neurodnia, which is a more generic term. So Uriel, who everyone will know as deeply associated with the lore and the Arataka Research Consortium, uh, has theorized that this term kybernaut is them referring to an individual with potential, that that they are giving us the option of acceptance, and that is the reason why they are calling us this new thing.
Yeah. Who are you fighting for?
I'm fighting for the loot, and that means we have to kill both sides.
Yeah.
Uh,
Explain that a little
which
bit.
actually,
I think we talked about
yeah.
it
So
yesterday, but
we did. And I'll give the quick
okay.
version, which is half the stuff you need to build it drops from helping one side, and half the stuff you need to build it drops from the other side. It's the prints from one side, all the 8 different prints that you need to assemble the thing, and on the other side, it's the materials, the special materials to build the dreadnought. So you have to run but one side repeatedly to get the prints, other side repeatedly to get the parts, and even after the damn thing is built, you have to continue running the side that helps the Triglavians and kills the Empire to continue getting blueprints for the ammo, because you want the thing to be able to shoot.
Well, this is funny. Does that mean that you have to buy? Let's say you want to fight for Triglavians, right? So you get half of the stuff you need to build this dreadnought. Do you have to buy the other stuff, or can you switch sides? Or is it really
Each
bad to switch
yeah, each
sides?
each time well, each time you do the site resets. So I could do, every 90 minutes. So I clear the site, 90 minutes later it's back up again. So if I go and I run it 10 times in a row, I could swap every time and it wouldn't make a difference. There's no standings, it doesn't affect my character. It's just you set the mode of the site itself by making your decision.
So, is there any, like in EVE Online in general, if you start fighting for one empire, you start losing faction favor in other
Standings.
empires. Standings, yeah. But I call it favor because people can understand that, don't understand what standings is. But
Right,
so you
right.
lose favor with other empires, and then you go and fight for them, and you gain favor with those empires, and then lose favor with the people that you were with. So it's kind of always balancing back and forth. Is that the case with Triglavians and empires?
So yeah, so we don't right now. There's no way to gain any faction standing with the Juglavian factions, and this site does not impact your standing with the empires, even when you fight them. These NPCs are actually brand new. CCP Sledgehammer's team built these NPCs, these retaliating empire entities, specifically for this, and they put a lot of care and thought into the design. Uh, they made them fight like those empires would fight. They gave the Kaldari missiles of different damage types. They gave the Amar newts, and the Kaldari have ECM, and the Minmatar have the paint. It's very interesting to see what they do, and how they've really gone out of their way to make this a rich content experience.
So no standings whatsoever associated with this. So there's no hit to standings by fighting for Triglavians.
Correct. Yeah, and there is a Triglavian faction in the game, and you cannot there's no way to gain or lose standings with it. There are skills that give you base standings, so some people will have like up to +2 with them, but that's not a functioning mechanic right now. That may be added at some point in the future, but who knows.
Cool. Well, that's encouraging because that means I can get involved with it without worrying about my long-term standing, say, with Caldari, because I shop at Caldari markets. And if I lose standings or favor with them, I will have to pay more in taxes. And so that might be a roadblock for me getting involved with anything that would hurt that low tax rate that I get from them. So knowing that I can do this without any hit to that is a good thing.
What's interesting though is they may not lower your standings by shooting them, but this site will pod you. These rats will absolutely shoot pods.
But not if you're fighting for them, will they?
Yeah, so if
Oh.
you fight for the Triglavians and you fight
Oh.
against the Empire will pod you. If you fight for the Empire and fight against the Triglavians will pod you, but only in this site.
Oh, the stakes are high.
Yeah,
So,
so if you go with a small group, that'll happen. But if you go in a large group, then when your ship is killed, then somebody else gets all the aggro, so you usually have time to leave. But if you hang around, then like don't think that it's like another site where you can just chill in your pod and take video. Like you got to go.
right. Now that's important because a lot of people, when they fight against non-player characters, right? They're fighting in the game's environment with against game NPCs. They will put on their best stuff because they know they can keep it. So they'll put in plugins that are really expensive, like 100 million to 500 million worth of plugins that help them perform a little bit better, or they're learning plugins or whatever. Because you've always had a safety net that the game won't pod you, won't destroy your pod and destroy your implants. Players will, but not the game until now.
So the Abyss was one of the first times that CCP has ever done that. The Abyss is a timed 20-minute dungeon that you have to clear and escape in order to maintain your stuff. And if you don't, then you lose your pod in that as well. And they're maintaining that level of well, not necessarily maintaining, but they're bringing that level of risk into this content now, because the other sites, the minor conduits, the major conduits, the emerging conduits that are outside of invasions, even in the world arcs, you would not actually lose your pod in those sites. But now the stakes are higher, and the empires are mad, and the Triglavians are serious.
Yeah, serious business. Let's look at. I saw something on. That's good to know. I think it's just a good reminder. Don't wear your best stuff to fight Triglavians, because they may pod you, or to fight against the empires for the Triglavians, because they might pod you. So careful with that. I'm looking at Ashtarothi here, and it says, good to be a recruiter, and he's got 2,100 Plex in his account. I think what he's saying there is that by recruiting people to EVE Online using that friendship recruitment thing, that will eventually pay off in some rewards, I think.
Yeah, that is the reward for their 20th subscription.
Whoa. So he's done 20,
So
20 people.
Oh, so he's gotten tons of people to sign up, but paid subscription is tougher, getting people to convert. And when you get 20 of those, you get paid a bunch of Plex. So he's been out there, and he has been selling Eve, and he has been bringing people in, and they have been liking it enough to pay for it.
That's good stuff. So Ashtarothi has brought in 20 paying customers to EVE Online, and he gets rewarded with, let's see what they give you. Somebody said, I didn't think they gave you Plex anymore, but I think here are the rewards. You get 2,000 Plex if you bring in 20. So 20 people have paid. He wins 2,000 Plex. That's 4 months of game time. And this is really funny. Somebody said, he's successfully scamming new bros. Wink. And,
they're very open about who gets what rewards. Like just using the buddy code alone is it gives you 1 million skill points right off the bat. So there's effectively no reason to not do it.
Yeah. No, I think Zero Gravity Banksy there was saying that Ashtarothi was making a joke that it's good to recruit because you can scam those guys for Plex. That's not what happened. Ashtarothi doesn't do anything like that. He earns it the old-fashioned way by recruiting players. And again, if you get 20 players in, you get 2,000 Plex. That's 4 months of time. And even if you get
keep in mind, you get rewards for just people using the link and not paying for a subscription.
Really? Where's that link? We're gonna log in. Let's get that link, huh? And start distributing it everywhere. Just get people to use it. Whoops, I better not do this on screen. So anyway, you can log in, get yourself a link, distribute that link, and hope that people click on it to use it to test out EVE Online. And best case, they sign up for EVE Online, and after 20 of those, you'll get 2,000 Plex as well. Pretty cool. All right, cool. I think that we're pretty much done, but I'm feeling good today. Tomorrow we'll have a hodgepodge and talk to a bunch of people in here about all kinds of different things. And hello, Roy Lott. How are you?
Pretty good.
Hey, man, you're in Aderon, right? No, that's just your last name.
Yeah.
You're in, what's the group again?
I'm with Mauro.
Yeah, Mauro.
And I'll have all in Aderon to help with Thakor here soon.
Yeah, that's only a small coincidence with the Aderon name. The Aderon is one of the generic system names the game gives you. And the reason that Aderon is one of the generic system names that it gives you is because that's the name of the. Is it a constellation or it's a constellation?
Yeah, it's a constellation.
And and they're in lore named after the same thing, the Aderon family name and the Aderon constellation. So, and the corporation, of course, takes the name from that as well.
Yeah, interesting. Didn't make that. One of the neat things about EVE Online, the map, is there's a few things to look at if you're looking at the map. Maybe we can look at that real quick. And this is one of them. I didn't know about the Aderon family lore link. Where did my in-game map go? Oh well, we'll get to it here. If you look at the map, go to universe, we'll go to Genesis, right? Now Genesis down here, if you can see that, I don't know if you can. Genesis region is the origin of the entire rest of the map. This is where the main gate is. It is on this map.
You'll find like New Eden and a couple other systems that are like super beginner systems that they started in with the Eve Gate.
Right.
Yeah, all the names of the systems indicate the history. You know, there's exit, there's dead end, you know.
Yeah, that's what's funny. So if you look at the progression, you start out in a New Eden space, right? And then it goes to Promised Land. And then it goes to Central Point because it splits there between Canard and Dead End, which means those go nowhere else. And then it goes
it's funny, the use of the word canard, like, that's not for nothing.
and then you get to Gateway. So you're like, oh, this is the way out. But then this is funny. It goes Gateway, exit, access. It's like they thought that was the way out, and they found another place, and then they thought that was the way out, and then they found another place, and then that was the way out. So that's pretty funny. And then you get into a different constellation. But that constellation is in Genesis near the bottom, and it is all low sec, so a very dangerous pilgrimage if you want to go to New Eden system, which has the actual gate that we all came through in lore. It's kind of funny.
The reason they didn't know, the reason that they thought these things was because until there were stargates, the only way to get from one system to the next was to send a slow ass ship the slow way to go build a stargate for you.
Oh, that's right.
Which is in fact how the Old Man Star system got its name. It was supposed to jump with a jump drive because it was, not the old way anymore. Mm-hmm. And something happened, and it went terribly wrong, and they landed in the wrong place. Everybody died except one dude. The one dude patched up the ship enough that he could survive, and it could get to the system. It took him 40 years. He arrived, built the Stargate, came back through, and then built a company based on all the drone designs that he wrote when he was drifting in space for 40 years. And that's the guy who founded Creodrome.
That's what Creodrome's from? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The lore you know.
And here it is.
That's Creodrome.
So Creodrome and Old Man Star are linked. And here's the stories of New Eden. These are called chronicles for older players. But these stories are, I'll just scroll real quick. You can see it's a little short fiction. And that's the story that he just told you was a little bit of a teaser for Old Man Star. The chronicle talks about this guy's voyage.
Yeah, so they have all these names, exit access, etc., because they didn't know until they got there, and it took them a long time to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was funny. Some of those chronicles are really stark. It gives you a lot of flavor about the dystopia that EVE Online really is. It's a harsh place. It's unforgiving, and terrible things happen to fictional characters. Luckily, we're all the immortals of this place, so we have riches beyond calculation, and if a crew dies in our ship because it blows up, so what? So we get to live different lives than most of the fictional characters in the game. They have brutal lives.
Yeah. Someone said it last night. I think it's one ISK is supposed to feed a family of 4 for like 4 years or whatever.
Oh my god. So the oldest system somebody's asking here, Accession 3, which is the newest, youngest system? That's a good question. I think the youngest system is probably, the way you figure out the youngest system. First of all, the oldest system is New Eden. So Genesis is the oldest region. New Eden system is the oldest system. And if I look here at, what you can do on this map, Dotland, allows you to look up things in their constellation names. So we'll do that, constellation names. So it's just called Eve. The constellation Eve is the oldest constellation. And then the oldest system is New Eden. That's where the portal to our old lives were. So that's the oldest system. The newest system is going to be in drones. Because drones did not exist when EVE Online started. And I think there might have been another area that didn't exist too, but I'm certain that this area didn't exist over here.
So in lore, the drone region gates were quote unquote locked out because we didn't know or like what was in there. So we had sent gate building ships through those systems. They may have been populated at some point in time, but they weren't populated in the past, 50 to 100 years in the game. And when the Galente, I think it was Galente Amar experiment broke loose and started, collecting drones and building these hives and fled into these regions, they just shut all the gates down, and they said no one should go in there. And then the event where these regions were then populated by CCP with the drone content, they re-onlined the gates, and like in game no one knew how these gates were turned back on, but obviously they were hacked by the drones.
Yeah, if you look at EVE expansions on the Wikipedia, you can find out some of the contents of the expansions. And so if we were to go to, come on, man, there, drones. So it wasn't known as drones. What would it be? Drone regions. I'm trying to find the expansion that has the drone regions when they were introduced.
Well, Peregrine Falls is one of the region names, if it references
well,
that.
the actual, the names of, no, that won't help. I need what the company refers to drone regions as. The thing is, there was a competition a long time ago, and the alliances that won or placed in that competition got their name on a region. And so it wasn't their direct name, it was a variation on the name. So the drone regions actually were named after player alliances or it wasn't corporations, I don't think, it was alliances. So Ethereum Reach, there was actually, thank you, Revelations. Somebody says it was Revelations, so let's go have a look. Close down some of this stuff here.
That's pretty early on.
Yeah, Revelations
1 and 2 were 2006, 2007.
Yeah, Revelations, there was 2 of them. Just like there's Invasions has chapter 1, chapter 2. Revelations had chapter 1, chapter 2. Or they didn't call it chapter, but it was 1 and 2. And that was basically 2006. So we'll look up Revelations.
Yeah, there it is. Revelations 1 says 8 new regions of space to conquer.
Yeah. So those 8 new regions are the newest regions in the game. One of those systems we assume is the newest system. In lore, I don't think there is any reference to the newest system discovered. So can't answer your question there, but it does bring up an interesting point that the drone regions is new space, or was new space in 2006. And it was named after player alliances that had won a certain competition. And that is how drone regions came to exist. Now we think of it as always have been around and everything else, but nope, there was a different kind of area. Also, they had another competition for the SOV change for Aegis SOVs, where I think it was a test server competition to see who could dominate the most space with the entosis mechanic. And 4 groups won there. And so that's why you find that the entosis modules are named after alliances. But of course, it's a variation on the alliance name. And I think Pandemic Legion was one of those. What were the 4? I should know the 4 off memory, but again, it's a detail I don't refer to that often, so I don't remember. But yeah, so in 2006, the fall 2006 is, well, if you think about that, it was 13 years ago, drone regions came into existence. Crazy when I think of it in those terms.
It's a long time.
Yeah. That's like about when I was having my child. And not that I had it, but I was there. And that's a long time ago. Okay. Hey, I want to thank CCP Convict, who's been in... oh, good point, Convict. CCP Convict's been in chat, answering questions, talking to you guys. Really appreciate him showing up. It's always an added benefit when you get someone like him around to keep things going, which is great. And he makes a good point. What about wormhole space? That came in 2009. That came in Apocrypha. So all those systems would be newer. And actually, this is a good point, and somebody pointed it out, and I didn't catch on quick enough. But I believe the actual latest is, and it was said by someone, I'll give them credit for it in just a second. Can you guess? Oh no, I misspelled it.
Thera.
Odyssey, exactly. Thera. I think it was Odyssey or Thera came in. I'm going to go.
I was actually surprised when I recently looked up the real world history surrounding that name, because they pulled that from real world history and mythology. It's actually pronounced Thera. Blew my mind.
Thera?
Yep.
I like that.
I was, and it's taking me a while to integrate that, but I'm trying.
Yeah. So somebody called it. Here it is. Yes. Arcanor 1981 said Thera is the newest system, and you would be right. Thera is the newest system discovered by EVE Online, and that was discovered, I'm pretty sure it was Odyssey.
I think there were other systems added at that same time, so there would be a tie. But yes, that is the first place tie.
Yeah. And I think it was Odyssey, although I don't see reference to Thera here. And it should be, because it was the flagship of that expansion. So that would be 2013, if that's the case. Yeah, it's funny that it wouldn't be here. It should be here. Thera. Where is Thera? How can you not put that in? That was like the flagship of that expansion.
Yeah, I'll look for an article that mentions its introduction.
Now, not only is Thera the very, let's just say it's the oldest, because I think Shattered Wormholes came after that, so sorry, Thera, you're losing your crown. There have been new systems. If you think of Shattered Wormholes, they were meant for frigates. They're smaller. They're rare.
There we go. It was introduced in the Rhea expansion in December 2014.
Rhea, wow, I was way off. So Odyssey was the Explorers expansion, but it wasn't until Rhea, which is a lot later. Let me go up to the index, because I thought Rhea was a small.
It's in 2014.
Okay. Rhea actually is an interesting expansion. How do we get into this? I love this though. This is the stuff I love. I'm in the wrong. This is not the right place to be in, because this doesn't have all the expansions. Rhea was the first expansion after they said no more big expansions, and that made it. Well, I guess they're here, but they're not listed. Here's Rhea on December. So it was the end of 2014.
Here's the Rhea patch notes in Twitch chat.
Ooh, thanks. Thank you. I'll put that up here. So Rhea was the first. Actually, I don't want to go into Rhea, just that, Thera is the, not only, let's say, the oldest system, but it's also the biggest by far. So it's a massive, massive system. Nothing else even compares to it, which is an interesting aspect to it.
So they added 100 Shattered Wormholes and Thera in that update.
So that is when the Shattered Wormholes appeared. Have there been any since?
I think the Drifter Wormholes were from before that, or were they not? The five Drifter holes?
Drifters, let's see. I think Drifters came after.
Barbican, Sentinel, Conflux, those guys.
I think all that was after Thera. So, okay, the newest system, inconclusive. We can find out, though. We just have to ask the right people.
Oh, I'm gonna find out right now.
Yeah. I like this joke here by Zalmox. Says, what expansion was nullsec gate built for Stain? Oh, wait. It wasn't.
So Johnny Splunk posted, I guess I may as well rewind to give some context here. The bookmark changes were recently added in EVE. Now bookmarks are shareable as opposed to becoming a physical item. You can assign an access to them, to a folder, permanent, temporary, etc. Different entities can be added to the access list. So EVE Scout and Signal Cartel one of the services that we've provided since our inception to the community is a constantly maintained and updated list of all connections into and out of Terra. Our scouts are scanning that system down constantly all day, every day. And we've published them on evescout.com. That's where they are. And we say how to get there and what the SIG is and how old it is. But you got to bring a probe scanner and scan it down. We just tell you what to find. But since the bookmark change has been put in, we are now able to publish a freely accessible bookmarks folder. So Johnny Splunk posted about this on Reddit, and posting that travel to and from Thera is now probe launcher optional, and this is a huge thing. One of the best comments on that Reddit thread that I saw was someone said, "So players gave us a gate to Thera, to Thera before CCP gave us a gate to Stain."
So the joke is, if you want to be in on it, there is a place called Stain. You can see it down here. And Stain, you cannot connect to it from lowsec. You must connect to it through 2 nullsec areas. You have to go through Providence, then Catch, then Stain. Or you have to go through Delve, then Period Basis, then Stain. And so there's no connection from Empire Space to Stain. Now, why is Stain important? Nobody can own Stain. Stain. It is a big area with a lot of pipes. I'll explain that in a second. But its sovereignty is Sancha. It's wild space. You can't own it. Therefore, it's kind of like a neutral area for people to fight in.
Yeah, there's one region of nullsec space that is owned by every individual pirate entity. For anyone who isn't familiar with this.
Yeah, well, are there any pirates that don't have a homeland?
No, all the major pirate factions all do. In fact, and some of the minor ones do as well. But yeah, the Serpentis Charistas, the drones now, Angels and Sanchas and Bloods.
Mordu's Legion even technically has a position.
Yeah, and there's Intaki.
But
Intaki has has something, and they're not technically pirates, but they're not quite Empire either.
Yeah.
I don't think the SOE holds SOV anywhere.
No.
Or EOM. I don't think EOM or SOE do.
Technically Thera, because it is a security system.
Sisters of Eden or whatever.
I don't think that if you you can pull it up on the map and it'll actually the game map will actually show you a badge of who owns it, and I don't think that they own Thera.
Well, no, because it's a wormhole, and
none
of them can have
SOV is allowed
actual
at all.
SOV, but it has security space and it's positive. So,
right. So that is Lishgrave talking with Fonsui there. The reason that Stain is a nice area. Oh, first of all, there are people who live in it that it's always a dangerous area. And one of the reasons it has a lot of pipes. You see these are pipes here. In other words, one way in, one way out. So there's a lot of places to Kate camp, which makes it dangerous to travel in, especially before things were nullified, right? Because the only way to get safely through was to take your chances using a cloaked ship, because these bubbles could be applied to a gate, and therefore when you were coming into a system, you were always stopped, and then you were killed by a gate camp. And this place is just brutal for that sort of gameplay. Now, that has since changed, since interceptors can get through without being disturbed by the bubbles, but that's why Stain has always been kind of a rough area. And there is no access except through nullsec, which also makes it dangerous. I believe
or by using our bookmarks.
If you're looking,
you can go through Thera.
Go through Thera, right? You can go through Thera, right? Good point. Using wormholes, you could get to Stain without going through nullsec. Another area that's like that is actually Solitude. As you see here, you have to go through Syndicate to get to Solitude, or Iridia, which is a really brutal low-sec system. One of the most violent ones, I think, is Iridia. So Solitude is also hard to get to. You never want to live there unless you're really wanting to live out in a rural area.
Solitude happens to be mostly low sec, which is interesting. Very little high sec in there, so it's actually a very good place to go if you want to kind of crab and be left alone in Empire space. It's interesting. You still have to be on your toes because low sec means Concord is not coming to help you,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like null light a little bit.
Yeah. Some things don't work. If you're near a gate, you might get some help. If you're near a station, you might get some help.
And you can't be bubbled, but that's it. Like there's no bombs, no bubbles, no bushes, you know, and no Concord.
Yes, so dangerous. All right. Well, we should do a show on this. Go region by region, talk about the regions, talk about what's good about it, what it's like living there. Right? Would you guys like that? Let me know. We could explore regions. I think Alec used to do something where he'd talk about a region on his show, Declarations of War. I think they've stopped doing that, but they used to talk about it, I think, in terms of the description of it, like the actual stuff. But anyway, yeah, we could talk about regions and what regions are good for outlaws, what regions are good for manufacturers, what regions are good for mining, where you can relax more, and where is more dangerous areas, where more volatility exists. That does shift, but generally, Eve regions have personalities, right? Again, Solitude, you're kind of out on your own. It's a little bit dangerous, but it's relatively, it's like an oasis in the desert. Meridia, that is connected to Solitude, is a very dangerous area. There's a lot of choke points. A lot of people fight there all the time. You go to Devoid, it's kind of, I like Devoid a lot. I think because it enters Providence, which is its own area. And but Devoid is an interesting point that is between Rennes and Amar trade hubs. And so there's a nice long trek there. It's a nice place. I like it. When I'm in the south, that's where
Providence
I like to live.
is special for a whole other reason.
Providence is it's a player made. I think it's a player made extension of the empires of Eve, right? The Marian Empire is all that yellow, and then you have Providence, which is a player controlled mirror to Law and Order that Amar provides.
Yeah, they RP that they are part of the Amar Empire and uphold its laws there. And the official the safety setting there is NRDS. So you have to make it onto their kill list to actually get shot there.
Yeah.
And you can you can diplo yourself out of the kill list as well. So like it's a very interesting place. It's
Right.
you know, it's so you have the NPC nullsec regions where you have stations that you can always dock in and no one can take Sov, and that's allows you to experience certain aspects of nullsec without all of them. And Providence is effectively building on that experience. They don't take place in the larger, we're going to take over the world war, but they do hold sovereignty and they do maintain it and they will fight for it fiercely. So it's a very interesting experience if you're trying to get, into the deeper game.
Right. The another area that's really cool if you're wanting to get involved with PvP is Syndicate. CCP Convict there says Syndicate is one of his favorite places. It's a lot of people's favorite places too. I've spent a lot of time in Syndicate. It's broken up into two areas. I think there's more of these little constellations are where a medium alliance will kind of fall into, and they have basically they're cul-de-sacs, right? So you have like a cul-de-sac area that leads into Outer Ring, which is an NPC area of mining. Not to say that mining happens there, but I'll get to Outer Ring in a second. But what's interesting about Syndicate, and I think one of the reasons people like using it, is you have this long pipe, which is basically one system after another that you could get caught on. But over here on the right-hand side, and I think this is actually where Goonswarm's traditional home was. I think a lot of groups start here in this area. Why? Because there's like 4 or 5 entrances to every system, which is very difficult to gate camp, because if you gate camp one gate, there are 4 others that people are going to be moving through. And you can move around systems so you're never stuck. So it's very difficult to gate camp this area. And that is like one of the popular homes for groups that don't want to constantly be harassed. So they start there, and a lot of activity goes on through there. This is where Syndicate is where Initiative spends a lot of time over the last 5 years, I think. Another really cool area is, wow, we could go through this whole place. I was going to say this is the last one because I'm getting out of time here, but Derelict over here, just next to Devoid, goes into Curse. Curse is, if we look at Curse carefully, it is another NPC area. Who's the owners of Curse? Let's see. Sovereignty. Angel Cartel. So this is the people who make the Macarials, the fast ships, the fast Minmatar ships, Angels. These
There's
guys.
suspicion that they have used Jove technology in them.
Interesting. That's advanced technology. So the Angel ships are, the Angels are who pacify or own Curse. And Curse is the home of like Russian alliances. This is where, if you look at all the Russian alliances, they came from Curse. All the people who were influential that created Red Alliance, XIX or Legion of Death, Solar Fleet, they all came from this. AAA all came from Curse. Because it was a battleground, and that's where the tough guys, early on, we're talking the first 3 years of EVE Online, Curse was a place where you went to rumble, you had to be like a heavy outfit to survive there. And you had groups like Arcane Technology, or ATUC, living there, kind of being the princes of EVE Online at the time. They grew up to transform into Destructive Influence, which went on to be a part of Band of Brothers and also now a part of Northern Coalition. So those are heavy hitters for a long time. But yeah, next to it is the place I actually wanted to talk about. So not Curse, but Derelict. And Derelict, to me, is like Iridia. It's low sec. It's got access to nullsec. So if you want to stage there, you can get to roaming action pretty quickly. In other words, PvP, space combat. But it's also got, because it's close to Providence, it's kind of got people that you can punch down on and people you can punch up on. So in other words, you can go into shallow water like Providence and find people that you could probably defeat, and then you can go into Curse, which has harder people to defeat, and then it's just it's a nice place to kind of pick what you want to do. And then you're close to Rennes, I believe, and also you can go up to Amar through Devoid. So that whole area in the south is an area that I really like. I also like Corazor. I think it's a nice area. And I think the queen of Corazor is now the queen of all Amar, if I'm not mistaken. Funny thing about Corazor, when the first tournaments happened, to see the succession tournaments happened, the people who won that were actually awarded, let's see here, if we go to Corazor Prime.
Actually, it's Tashmurkhan.
Is it? That's the current.
The last contender. Yeah, the last contender against her was Corazor.
Okay, so who's the queen now?
Ketsi's Tashmurkhan.
Okay, good. So that's different. They're like a rich, what do you call it?
Yeah, she's self-made richest person in New Eden.
Yeah, but Corazor, they won the tournament, and they got the pilots got planets named after them, I believe. It's right here, Ellipticum. Ellipticum, I think, is the name of the pilot that actually won or led the team that won the Accession tournament. So Corazor actually won the tournament, and of course that player fought in a tournament, was representing an Amar house. That house won because that player won the tournament. That house's prince was put on the throne and then assassinated, and in comes the person that was there for a long time, Jamil Saram. And so she didn't actually win. She actually lost, but she was put in place by some kind of assassination, and that's why she ruled until she was killed by drifters. Yeah.
She had already been effectively suborned by a drifter intelligence that had hijacked into her infomorph and then she was fighting. So like things were not so great for her by the time she died.
Right. So Corazor again they were the winners of the first tournament, which happened in 2003 or 4. And Fonsui and Convict, CCP Convict, correct me that it is Katis Tashmerkan from the Tashmerkan region that is now the queen of Amar. So let's get that straight.
And she was rich before she was empress. Like she built a whole business and got super filthy rich.
I think their family is like super commercially powerful. Tashmerkan is like supposed to be a really rich area, and so that's their family background. Whereas Jamil Saram's family was more militant, more military, and more like conservative about changing everybody to Amarian religion and that kind of stuff. And each family has, Kador is a family, Corazor is a family, Canid, I think, is a rogue family, but those are the families that kind of make up the empire, and they kind of battle for supremacy of the Amarian Empire. Yes, see, her family was already rich, but she set off to make her own fortune and succeeded, if Convict recalls correctly. All right, so I'm glad you guys are talking there. Lots of lore stuff. I didn't expect to get into this because lore is not one of my strong suits, but I do enjoy reading it. And I recommend that you read it. There's a book called Imperium Age, which I really liked. And then you have, what's the sequel to Imperium?
Templar 1.
Templar 1.
Part of the reason why the lore is so awesome is because they will write the players into it. They will name things after players. Like this entire story that you were just describing, the in-game lore events followed the player actions, not the other way around. And that is, I think that's kind of unprecedented and only able to be as meaningful as it is due to the single world nature of the game. Something happens here, it happens everywhere. Every player that ever plays this game will have at some point an opportunity to learn what happened in the Amar story that was told by the players and no one else.
Mm-hmm. All right, a quick correction, and this is from Antin, who says, Canid lost in succession bid and refused to commit ritual suicide, so he took off. So
Khanid did that a while. King Khanid did that a while back. That's why there's the Khanid Empire, and that's why they use missiles, because they kind of teamed up with Caldari.
Right, and Khanid actually attacks because they make friends with Caldari. It makes sense. Khanid actually attacks the Galente Empire or Republic, and it's a surprise attack, and it's captured on, I think it was Quantum Rise trailer, or after Imperium Age anyway. So back in about 2008, 2009, there's a trailer where these Amarian ships start attacking a Galente base, and then the Galente military comes in, and there's going to be a big fight, and then the signal goes out. I think that was Quantum Rise, but that's when that happens. So Khanid is kind of a rogue Amarian.
He was sort of brought back in to the fold at some point or another. They reaccepted him. It's still kind of tense, but he is officially, the Khanid are officially Amar.
They're back again. Okay.
Yeah, but they're still using missiles. So fly sacrilege, everyone.
So Derelict, that place that I like that has good terrain and good access to light PvP and heavy PvP, its story is that it's actually not populated by Amarians or Minmatar, but something in between, which is Amatar. And I had trouble understanding what Amatar was. It's not a mix of both. It's basically Minmatar that liked being ruled by the Amarians and think that's a better way to do it. So they're kind of like Minmatar race with Amarian rules. Okay, I'm out of gas. Time to go. I hope you guys like that. It's always fun talking about this stuff. I never thought of it. Maybe we should do that. We'll go region by region, talk about some of the interesting things. All the stuff that we hit was on the west and then south. We didn't even hit all of it. So there's a ton of stuff to do. Let me know if that appeals to you so that we know it's something that wouldn't just be a waste of your time. I don't think it is, because I bet there are a lot of people who don't understand the history of these regions. We should definitely get into that. Oh, hey, Caleb, how's it going?
Hey guys.
Getting
I
in
was
it.
just checking what you guys were talking about, and apparently you were doing law.
Well, at the very end, I started out talking about the first half hour was talking about TIS and my being judgmental and INN and good stuff, but controversial stuff.
Wow, I missed all the controversial stuff.
Yeah, controversial stuff. And then we talked about some of the stuff CCP was up to. Their wallet is going to be tomorrow. That wallet interface is going to be
on mobile, not on desktop.
Right.
Okay.
On mobile tomorrow. And then 5 days later is the expansion that comes in. Not expansion, but I guess it's the update. And that will have the new wallet in it. It's called the market update, I think. So those are the two things.
You guys have issues with the effects from the prolonged downtime.
Downtime?
Yeah.
Just that
my client completely shut itself.
I mean, local lost its damn mind.
Yeah, my install was
it did.
Broke.
All right, good. Getting good feedback here. Thanks for the stuff. Very interesting. That's great. Keep it going. That would be a great subject to do. Thanks for a very interesting Twitch session. Great. It's good to know you guys want to talk about regions, talk about some history. That's stuff that I can definitely deliver on.
Can you go back and talk about the old school law things, the slightly controversial things?
Like what are you talking about?
Like slavery and decadence and all of that. Religious tyranny.
All the empires represent like some of the worst aspects of humanity run wild.
Exactly.
The Galente are all indulgent, and the Amar are militantly religious, etc., etc. The Minmatar are not as fleshed out as the others, and I guess that because they're not as fleshed out as the others, it's not as much bad stuff. Although if you look hard enough, you'll find bad stuff. But they are often kind of held up as the ones. The Enheduani, the Jove faction, that was like kind of like the Illuminati is the best way I can think of describing them. They were the one they wanted those particular people in Minmatar to be their successors. Essentially, they said that these are the ones that have the greatest chance of achieving what we have as the Jove. So that's the kind of quick rundown on that.
It would be fun to actually talk about vices and virtues, right, in the different aspects of the law.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Lots of stories in EVE Online. Again, this game's been developed over what?
20 years.
20 years, right? I mean, 3 years that the game didn't exist, but it was being developed, plus the 17 that did exist. That's 20 years of EVE Online and building these stories and building all that stuff. I think a lot of work was done in the past to bring up the whole backstory. You can call it lore, but it's the backstory of EVE Online. And there's a ton of neat little things in how they work. Plus, on top of that, you have players that influence storylines and events that players witness that influence storylines. And so those are markers in time that make it very textured. All this kind of stuff is very interesting for players that want to get deeper into EVE Online to figure out, for instance, today, how Creodrone came into existence.
And I don't know if I'm the only one, but I actually have this pet peeve. I like to look for the real life inspiration sources for the law, right? Where does the names and the terms come from? What is the actual basis of the entire law in E, right? Who were the sources of inspiration? Where did it come from? What books did they read? I think just looking into something like what is the terminology of naming ships? Where are all those names coming from, right? Some from Greek law, some from Roman, some from Norse, and then of course later on we got the Japanese mythology stuff. It's just fascinating to go in there and look at the specifics. What is this name from?
Yeah. I always go and try to look up the history of one of those things. I just mentioned earlier that I was reading about Thera and learned the correct pronunciation and that I'd been saying it wrong all this time. So that's something that I learned today. But it's I also like doing that with the Triglavian lore specifically because it gives me potential things that, I may be able to see where they're going with something based on that. If I see thing 1 and thing 2, and I see the thing 3 is the next thing that happens, but that hasn't happened yet in the story, then maybe I have some intel on what's going to go on. So it's been very interesting going through all the Slavic mythology to brush up on what it is that we're actually like. You can sort of predict behavior based on, so there's a hospodar and and another one that are the two names of the officers of the Triglavian rats that you fight. And uh, based on the history behind those two names, you can tell which one is tougher than the other.
Yeah, and of course the whole dragon thing with this Nitra and all that naming thing from Slavic. But I'm just kind of interested in maybe getting Juvinius on a show and having Matterall and Juvinius talk about the potential future where we might actually finally get around to looking at Aztec mythology and Mayan. And then roll out the fucking Spanish localization, right? So we can get Mesoamerica and South America on the map, so we can get awesome. the Quetzalcoatl and Chicatlipochtli.
There's a lot of rich history there to mine.
Yeah, then you have to go to India and get all those gods and stuff.
Oh yeah. When we roll out that way, but it would just be fun if they started Spanish localization and then started using Mayan and Aztec and Inca mythology to actually do the naming conventions. Of course, you would have a lot of laughs, Matterall, because finally you could point at other people and laugh at them mispronouncing shit.
I could say names right for once.
Yeah, exactly. Where you are ahead of everyone else.
Home court advantage. Want to point out one last thing before we go. Invasion Tournament online qualifiers. The slate has been picked. I think those are the teams that are going to be on there. They're all made up teams because I think they're small teams, not alliance teams. These guys will battle it out online. And can you watch? I don't know if you can watch, but the winner of this tournament will go to Iceland to fight the winner of teams that won other tournaments during the year. So every meetup in the World Tour had a tournament, and all those qualifiers will go to Iceland too. And here's the people that qualify it online will go as well. And all those teams then will fight it out for the crown at Iceland for FanFest. I think I probably could have said all that better, but there it is. Online qualifiers. Check it out. Okay, guys, thanks very much. Want to say thanks to Caleb and Fonsway for hanging out with me, and I appreciate you guys there in chat correcting me and giving me information and stuff like that. I will be back tomorrow. We'll have a hodgepodge of people in here. It's kind of a free Friday's kind of a relaxed day, and we just talk amongst ourselves about whatever's on our mind. And that is everything for Thursday, December 5th. We will see you tomorrow. Stay tuned. We're going to raid someone. Let me find out who that is. Oh, not going to raid that guy. So let's, you guys pick. That's audience choice.
Well, Tamaya just shaved a beard, so he needs like company to keep warm.
Jonathan Thorpe, thanks for the bits. I don't know how to hustle with Twitch, but thank you for donating. If you want to support Talking in Stations, I will say Patreon/Matterall and support us and support our work and keep us going, keep us motivated. We really appreciate that. God, Twitch is really annoying now because it's doing stuff that is not, makes it hard to just use Twitch.
I think you can use /raid command.
No, it's not that. It's just I want to raid somebody I don't know, and to look that up, I have to get to. Let's do Marquis Dragon. I say I don't know Marquis Dragon, but everybody knows Marquis Dragon. So, and he's good to listen to, I think. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow. Take care. Okay, raid's going through. 3, 2, 1, and raid. All right. He's a crook. Oh my god. All right, I'm hanging up. I gotta turn this off. Somebody wrote that in the comments. That wasn't me saying.
Yeah,
that.
that's the last
That wasn't
the
me
last
saying
thing said was he's a crook.
I'm not endorsing that. Bye.